Welcome to a journey through time, where myths breathe and ancient voices whisper across the ages. Tonight we step into the world of Greece, a land of marble temples, endless skies, and immortal legends. Among the gods of Olympus, one name shines brighter than thunder itself, a figure both feared and adored. He is Zeus, the lightning god, master of the storm, and guardian of justice in the heavens and on earth. But Zeus was not always a mighty ruler, seated on a golden throne high above the clouds of Olympus. His story begins with secrecy, courage, and the hidden cradle of a child destined to change the cosmos. Long before thunder rolled at his command, Zeus was a quiet infant, sheltered from the fears of his father. The wind carried lullabies through a cave in Crete, and the earth itself seemed to shield his tiny form. This child would grow into the leader of gods, his spirit bound to lightning, his heart bound to justice. And so, let us step closer, dear listener, to the fire of Olympus, where myths awaken and Zeus is born. In the beginning, long before Olympus stood tall, the sky trembled under the rule of a fearful titan. Cronus, mighty and stern, ruled with a heavy heart, haunted by a prophecy that shook his soul. It was said one of his children would rise, strong and destined to take his throne away forever. Fear twisted his mind, and each child born to him was taken from their mother, swallowed by dread. Rhea, his wife, watched in silence as her children disappeared, each one lost to the hunger of fear. Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, and Poseidon were gone, hidden within the darkness of Cronus himself. Yet when her sixth child was ready to be born, Rhea's heart burned with a mother's fierce resolve. She could no longer bear the loss, no longer surrender to the shadow of fear that ruled her family. So, she sought counsel in secret, turning to the earth and the heavens for wisdom and guidance. The plan was daring, fragile, and filled with hope, yet it offered the child a chance to live. On a night heavy with stars, Rhea gave birth to her son, the one who would be named Zeus. But she did not let Cronus touch him, nor hear his cry, for his fate lay elsewhere, far from danger. In a cave upon the island of Crete, hidden by mountains and forests, the child was carried. There, the air hummed with mystery, and the earth itself seemed to embrace the newborn gently. Rhea placed him in the arms of caring nymphs, guardians chosen to protect him in secret. These nymphs sang to him softly, their voices blending with the winds that swept through the cave. The trees whispered blessings, and streams nearby trickled like gentle lullabies for the child. Zeus lay wrapped in blankets, safe from the gaze of his father, hidden from a destiny too near. The cave became his cradle, the earth his shield, the sky his endless companion above the rocks. Here began the childhood of the god who would one day command thunder and rule the heavens. Yet, the world did not sleep while he grew, for Cronus still ruled, blind to the truth unfolding. He believed he had swallowed all his heirs, unaware that one remained, strong and untouched. Rhea's clever trick deceived him, for in place of her son, she had given him a stone to swallow. Cronus never knew the difference, his fear quieted by false certainty, his power unchallenged. Meanwhile, the baby thrived in secret, nourished by the milk of the goat Amalthea. This goat, gentle and patient, fed the child and stood as a symbol of protection and care. Her horns glowed faintly under the moon, a quiet promise that the child she nourished would endure. And so, under the watchful eyes of nymphs and nature, Zeus grew, cradled by silence and hope. He laughed, and the cave echoed with joy. He cried, and the skies trembled with distant thunder. Even as an infant, the bond between him and the heavens revealed itself in subtle wonder. The Curetes, warriors of the island, played their part in his safety too, loyal to his secret. They clashed their shields and stamped their feet whenever his cries might be heard beyond the cave. Their rhythm disguised his voice, masking the presence of the child from the ears of Cronus. Every sound of metal and every beat of the earth told the story of protection and defiance. They became part of the myth, dancers of noise who drowned out danger with courage and devotion. And so, night after night, Zeus lay in the cradle of Crete, unseen yet destined for greatness. The cave walls glowed faintly, as if touched by divine light, shaping his spirit with silent strength. The sea beyond the island whispered promises, carrying dreams of freedom across its endless waves. The stars above, bright and countless, mirrored his destiny. A throne, waiting among the heavens. No storm had yet broken, no lightning had yet struck, but the spark of power already stirred within. This was the childhood of Zeus, the lightning god, born in secret, yet meant for the open sky. It was a story of fear overcome by love, of hope hidden deep within the heart of the earth. And though the world still belonged to Cronus, change was already stirring in the quiet shadows. For in the hum of the cave, in the laughter of a child, destiny whispered of a king to come. The cave on Crete was more than stone and shadow. It was a sanctuary alive, with whispers of destiny. Within its hidden heart, the child Zeus grew, surrounded by guardians, both mortal and divine. The nymphs who tended him spoke in songs, their melodies weaving comfort through the cool air. Each note seemed to cradle his spirit, guiding him toward a future larger than the mountains outside. Nature itself became his teacher, the rustling leaves telling stories of balance and resilience. The streams nearby taught him patience, flowing gently, yet carving stone with endless persistence. The wind carried secrets of the skies, reminding him that one day he would command its power. The earth, beneath his feet, hummed with life, a silent promise of strength and grounding. And so, even in hiding, Zeus was never alone, for the world itself shaped him into who he would be. He grew strong, his laughter filling the cave, his presence a quiet echo of thunder yet to come. The goat, Amalthea, faithful and nurturing, continued to feed and protect the child with devotion. Her gentle eyes glowed with warmth, as if she knew the child she nursed carried the sky in his soul. Her milk nourished him, but her care gave him more, a sense of trust, of love, of belonging. One day, in his play, Zeus tugged too hard at her horn, and it broke, a moment of sorrow and wonder. Yet the horn became a gift, transformed into the cornucopia, a symbol of endless abundance. This miracle was not just a tale of accident, but of destiny, where even loss turned into blessing. Zeus, though young, began to see the signs that the world around him bent to his presence. The nymphs marveled as the air sparked faintly when his laughter echoed against the stone walls. The sky above answered his cries with distant rumbles, as if the heavens recognized their child. Still, the threat of Cronus lingered, a shadow heavy over the hidden cave in Crete's heart. The Curetes, loyal protectors, never ceased their rhythmic dance of shields and stomping feet. Every clang of bronze against bronze was both music and armor, guarding the secret of Zeus. To any outsider, it was mere ritual, but to those within, it was the veil that kept the child unseen. Night after night, their steps echoed like heartbeat drums, a steady rhythm of defiance. Zeus watched them as he grew, his young eyes wide with wonder at their courage and strength. Their devotion planted in him the first seeds of what it meant to be a leader, to inspire loyalty. He did not yet understand power, but he began to sense the bond between protector and protected. The cave itself seemed to glow in his presence, touched by a faint aura of divine promise. Shadows danced along the walls, moving with a light that had no torch, only the child himself. The nymphs whispered that the boy was more than a hidden heir. He was a spark of hope for all, and so they raised him not with fear, but with joy, believing in the future he carried. Even as danger loomed outside, inside the cave there was laughter, music, and quiet peace. Zeus played among the rocks, his small hands gripping the earth as if to claim it as his own. He gazed often at the entrance, where the sky stretched wide, calling to him with silent promise. Though he could not leave, he felt it, the bond of child to sky, of soul to destiny. The stars at night became his companions, shimmering above the island with gentle radiance. Each light in the heavens seemed to whisper his name, guiding him toward a fate beyond childhood. The sea that circled Crete spoke too. its waves whispering dreams of freedom and vast horizons. And Zeus, though small, carried those whispers in his heart, a child of promise and of storm. The days turned to years, and the child grew stronger, his spirit shaped by love and hidden power. He learned patience from the streams, courage from the warriors, and kindness from the nymphs. He learned trust from Amalthea, wisdom from the earth, and hope from the stars above. All the while, Cronus remained blind, unaware that his downfall was growing under his very rule. The prophecy still waited, quiet yet unbroken, nestled in the cradle of Crete's secret cave. For in the silence of hiding, Zeus was not only surviving, he was preparing to rise. And though he was still a child, his heart beat with the rhythm of thunder yet to come. As Zeus grew older, the cave could no longer contain the wonder stirring within his heart and soul. He was no longer a fragile child hidden in shadows, but a youth touched by the breath of the skies. Each day his steps carried him closer to the entrance of the cave, where sunlight spilled like fire. When he stretched his hands toward the heavens, the air shimmered faintly, as if alive to his call. The nymphs noticed these sparks, soft glimmers of light that flashed when his emotions grew strong. At first, they thought them tricks of stone and sky, but soon they realized the truth of his nature. Zeus was bound to lightning, a child of thunder whose spirit reached beyond the island's horizon. His laughter made the air tingle, a playful storm in the making, gentle yet filled with quiet power. His anger stirred winds that shook branches, a reminder that even calm seas may hide mighty waves. Nature itself answered him, shaping his awareness that he was unlike any mortal or god before him. One evening, dark clouds gathered suddenly above Crete, though the day had been clear and calm. Zeus stood at the cave's edge, his eyes wide, as thunder rolled like a heartbeat across the sky. A bolt of light split the heavens, dazzling and fierce, and yet he felt no fear, only recognition. It was as if the storm spoke his name, claiming him as its own child, chosen and eternal. The nymphs fell silent, bowing their heads, for they too felt the weight of the sky's embrace. From that day forward, the young god walked with a new sense of who he was meant to become. He was still hidden, still growing, yet the signs of power could no longer be ignored by any soul. The goat, Amalthea, remained near, and when storms broke, she calmed him with her gentle presence. Her patience taught him that power, though fierce, must be guided by restraint and tenderness. Zeus often touched her broken horn, the cornucopia, a reminder that blessings may rise from loss. The Curetes continued their noisy dance, their bronze shields clashing to hide the god's voice. Now, Zeus sometimes joined them, stamping his feet in rhythm, his laughter ringing in the cave. With each step, he learned strength. With each clash, he learned courage. And with each cry, he learned will. His body grew tall and strong, his eyes brighter, and the sparks in his hands grew ever more clear. He began to test them in secret, raising his palm to the sky, calling down faint threads of light. At first, they flickered weakly, small as fireflies, but they filled him with awe and determination. The nymphs warned him to be careful, to guard his gift, for Cronus still ruled, and shadows lingered. Yet Zeus could not deny the bond between his soul and the storm. It was his essence, his truth. The nights grew restless as he practiced, watching the skies respond in rumbles and flashes. Each spark was a promise of what he would one day wield, not for fear, but for justice and balance. He began to dream of Olympus, though he had never seen it, a mountain crowned with endless clouds. In his visions, he stood tall upon its peak, thunder in his hand, watching over gods and mortals. These dreams filled him with resolve, for they were not illusions, but glimpses of destiny ahead. Even the stars seemed to guide him, their light-forming patterns that told of a throne to come. The sea whispered more urgently now, its waves crashing with the rhythm of thunder in his chest. And though he remained in hiding, Zeus felt the pull of a greater path he could not ignore. The cave that once protected now felt smaller, a cradle ready to release the child into the world. The nymphs watched with pride and sorrow, knowing their time as his sole guardians was ending. For the boy had awakened, and the god within him was ready to step into his rightful place. Zeus was no longer only a hidden son of Rhea, but the storm itself, awake and unshakable. And though Cronus still sat upon his throne, the first sparks of change had already touched the sky. For thunder had found its voice, lightning had found its bearer, and destiny had found its king. Zeus stepped further into youth, and with each day his heart stirred with questions greater than himself. He looked at the sky and felt its weight, vast and endless, and wondered what role he was born to play. The nymphs told him tales of gods and titans, of power both cruel and kind, of choices shaping the world. He listened with bright eyes, absorbing every story, learning that strength without wisdom could destroy. Zeus began to see that power was more than sparks of light. It was responsibility, heavy and sacred. The Cretes, his protectors, showed him courage, but they also taught him discipline and self-control. Every clang of their shields reminded him that force was loud, yet true strength was often quiet. Zeus practiced patience, holding his power back, waiting for the right time instead of rushing. His heart yearned for action, yet he learned to temper it, to balance desire with thought. This was the beginning of leadership, the seed of wisdom taking root in the storm-born child. One evening, as stars filled the heavens, Zeus sat by the cave's mouth listening to the sea's rhythm. He asked the nymphs, "Why must I stay hidden? Why can I not face the world and my father?" Their answer was gentle but firm, reminding him that destiny unfolds when the time is ready. "You are not meant to rush," they said. "The world will call for you when it needs you most." These words lingered in his mind, shaping his sense of duty, teaching him patience as a virtue. Zeus began to dream not of conquest, but of harmony, a kingdom built on balance, not fear. He watched the natural world and saw how rivers carved valleys with time, not forceful haste. He saw how trees bent with the wind but did not break, finding strength and flexibility. The lessons of nature became his guide, reminding him that a leader serves, not only commands. Zeus grew taller, his voice deeper, his presence stronger, and the nymphs marveled at his change. His laughter carried warmth, but his gaze held seriousness, a balance between light and gravity. He began to speak less, but when he did, his words carried weight, like thunder before rain. The Cretes saw in him not just a boy, but a commander, one who inspired loyalty by being fair. Amalthea's gentle eyes reminded him that even the strong must protect the weak with kindness. Every day was a lesson, every night a reflection, shaping Zeus into a figure larger than himself. He discovered that storms inside him could be calmed by thought, guided by choice, directed by will. This discovery gave him confidence, not in his power alone, but in his ability to guide it well. Zeus began to imagine not just himself, but others, his siblings, lost within Cronus's grasp. He wondered what kind of world could exist if they too were free, if balance was restored. The thought filled him with hope, a vision of unity that stretched beyond his cave on Crete. For the first time, leadership was not about himself alone, but about all who depended on him. In quiet moments, he whispered to the stars, promising to be a ruler who brought justice and peace. The stars seemed to answer, flickering brighter, as if sealing a pact with the young god. Zeus felt the bond deepen between him and the heavens, a shared purpose, a sacred destiny. The storm within him no longer frightened him, for it was no longer wild, but a force to be guided. The nymphs knew then that the child had become more than a hidden heir. He was a leader in spirit. He did not yet sit on Olympus, nor did he wield full command. But the shape of a king was clear. The cave that once sheltered a child now held a youth who carried the weight of heaven in his chest. Every spark in his hand was a reminder, every rumble of thunder a call, every star a witness. Zeus was learning not just to hold power, but to lead with it, to weave justice with strength. And though Cronus still ruled above, in secret a truer ruler was being formed by patience and wisdom. For destiny does not come in haste, but step by step, through lessons, choices, and quiet resolve. And in those quiet years, the storm-born god became more than a hidden child. He became a leader. Zeus was growing into his strength, but with it came a restlessness he could no longer ignore. The cave had been his cradle, his shield, but now it felt too small for the vastness of his spirit. He would climb the cliffs of Crete, standing tall where the sea crashed and the winds howled fiercely. There, with arms outstretched, he felt at one with the sky, his true father and teacher. Every spark that danced across his fingers whispered of purpose, of a destiny larger than hiding. The nymphs sensed this change and began to teach him not just stories, but lessons of the heart. They spoke of mercy, reminding him that compassion must stand beside strength to guide true justice. They spoke of balance, teaching that light and shadow both had roles in the weaving of fate. Zeus listened, his mind expanding, his resolve sharpening, as he began to picture the world anew. One night, in the stillness, he dreamed of his siblings trapped in Cronus's belly, waiting in silence. He saw their faces, not in despair, but in quiet hope, as if they trusted he would one day free them. This dream shook him, for he realized his journey was not only his, but theirs as well. His destiny was tied to them, bound by love, by justice, and by the promise of freedom. Awakening, he carried this vision within him, a fire no cave could contain, no shadow could smother. From that day, he walked with greater purpose, his steps heavier with the weight of unseen chains. The Curetes noticed his silence growing deeper, his eyes carrying storms even when skies were clear. They did not ask questions, but in their dance they struck their shields louder, as if cheering him on. Amalthea, too, watched him with tender care, her presence a reminder that gentleness was strength. Zeus would rest against her side, listening to her steady breath, grounding his wild spirit in peace. The nymphs whispered among themselves, wondering if the time was nearing for him to leave Crete. Yet they knew fate was not theirs to rush, only to guide until the world itself called his name. One morning, while the horizon glowed with dawn, Zeus felt a pull deep within his chest. It was not fear, nor anger, but a call, as though the heavens themselves beckoned him to rise. He looked to the sky, and a bolt of lightning split the clouds, bright and fierce, yet welcoming. In that moment he knew. The storm was not outside him, it was him, and he was the storm. He began to train more openly, raising his hands, drawing sparks, letting thunder echo in his voice. The nymphs watched in awe, their young god no longer a child, but a force awakening. Each spark grew stronger, each rumble louder, until the very cliffs trembled beneath his call. Still, he did not unleash recklessly, for Amalthea and the nymphs had taught him restraint. He practiced with patience, shaping the lightning like clay, bending its fury into grace. Zeus was no longer only learning, he was preparing, step by step, for the day he would act. At night, he whispered again to the stars, promising his siblings he would not abandon them. He vowed to bring justice, to restore balance, to build a world not ruled by fear. The stars shimmered brighter, as though sealing his oath with their silent, eternal light. The sea answered too, its waves roaring, as if applauding the promise made by the storm-born. Even the earth seemed to tremble gently, acknowledging the awakening of its future king. The nymphs, though proud, felt sorrow, for they knew his path would soon lead him far from them. They had raised him with love, sheltered him with devotion, but destiny cannot be contained. And Zeus, though grateful, felt the same truth pressing on his heart like the weight of the sky. The time was not yet, but it was close. He could sense it in every storm, in every dream. His spirit was rising like thunder before rain, gathering force, ready to break across the world. The boy who had once hidden in a cave was now a young god whose eyes held Olympus within them. And though Cronus still ruled in power, Zeus's awakening meant that change was no longer a whisper. It was a promise, a storm on the horizon, certain and unstoppable, carried on lightning's wings. The day came when Zeus could no longer remain hidden, for fate itself began to stir the air around him. Dreams pressed heavily upon his nights, visions of thrones, storms, and voices calling his true name. He awoke with fire in his chest, knowing that the silence of waiting was giving way to the sound of action. The nymphs saw it too, their young god standing taller, his presence filling the cave with quiet thunder. Even Amalthea sensed the shift, her eyes watching with pride and sorrow, knowing change was near. Zeus began to climb higher than before, reaching the peaks where the winds roared like living giants. From there he could see the vast world, mountains like teeth, seas without end, stars without number. His heart beat with wonder, for he realized this world was his to protect, not simply to watch. Yet with that wonder came weight, the burden of choice, the challenge of stepping into destiny's fire. One evening, as the sun fell into the sea, a stranger arrived, cloaked and shining in quiet dignity. It was Metis, the goddess of wisdom, who had come to guide him toward the path that lay ahead. Her eyes gleamed with knowledge, her voice calm yet filled with the authority of ancient truth. "You are no longer a child, Zeus," she said. "You carry within you the storm and the crown of tomorrow." Her words stirred him, both humbling and strengthening, as though the stars themselves were speaking. Metis spoke of Cronus, of the siblings lost in shadow, of the imbalance suffocating heaven and earth. She told him the time would soon come to challenge the Titan, not with fury, but with wisdom. Zeus listened with intensity, every word carving itself into the foundation of his heart. Metis taught him patience once more, reminding him that storms strike when the moment is right. She also taught him strategy, the art of foresight, the strength of unity, the power of compassion. "You must lead not by fear, but by trust," she said. "The world longs for harmony, not another tyrant." Zeus understood then that his destiny was not only to overthrow, but to rebuild and restore balance. He felt the weight of these words, like thunder on the horizon, heavy yet clarifying. Night after night, Metis trained him in thought, in decision, in the delicate weaving of destiny. By day he practiced his strength, shaping lightning, bending storms, learning control over wildfire. The Curetes struck their shields in rhythm, guiding his movements, cheering his growth into command. Amalthea's gentle presence grounded him, teaching him that might must always bow to gentleness. The nymphs offered their counsel, weaving stories into lessons that deepened his wisdom. Zeus absorbed it all, not as a child learning, but as a leader preparing for the world. At times, doubt crept in, whispering that the task before him was too vast, too dangerous. But each time, the stars shone brighter, the waves roared louder, reminding him he was not alone. He carried within him not only his own strength, but the hopes of his siblings and the trust of the world. Metis placed her hand upon his shoulder, steady and firm, her gaze never wavering. "Remember," she said, "your power is not the storm itself, but the choice of when and how to wield it." These words burned into his spirit, a truth he would carry into every step of his journey ahead. Zeus no longer looked like a youth in hiding, but a god whose eyes mirrored the skies themselves. His laughter still rang warm, but beneath it lay the steady drumbeat of thunder, sure and unshakable. The cave that had sheltered him now felt like a memory, a cradle that had served its purpose well. For Zeus was ready to step forward, guided by wisdom, strengthened by love, armed with lightning. The horizon no longer seemed distant, but near, alive with the promise of trials and triumphs. And though the world still lay under Cronus's shadow, hope had awakened in the form of a storm. It was not yet unleashed, but it waited, building, patient, certain, guided by wisdom's steady hand. And in that waiting, the god who would one day rule Olympus found his final lesson: restraint. For only by knowing when to hold back could he one day know when to strike with purpose. Zeus was ready, not yet to act, but to become the storm's keeper, the bearer of destiny's crown. Zeus now stood at the threshold of destiny, his heart burning with a fire no cave could contain. The lessons of Metis, the love of Amalthea, and the guidance of the nymphs shaped his every breath. He was no longer hidden, though still unseen by Cronus, for his spirit reached beyond the island. Every storm that rolled across the heavens seemed to echo his awakening, like a chorus announcing change. Yet Zeus knew that power alone would not bring freedom. Wisdom and courage must walk beside it. He sought counsel with Metis again, beneath a sky heavy with stars, their voices hushed by destiny. "Cronus will not yield easily," she said, "but his strength lies in fear, and fear always weakens itself." Zeus nodded, his eyes sharp with resolve, knowing that victory would not come from rage, but from vision. Metis spoke of unity, of allies yet hidden, of siblings bound in darkness who waited for his hand. Her words were seeds planted in fertile soil, and within Zeus they grew into unshakable resolve. The Curetes continued their dance, their shields clashing, their chant steady as if blessing his path. Zeus joined them often, not only for training but for rhythm, for the heartbeat of courage in unison. Their dance was more than noise, it was a song of protection, a reminder that he was never alone. Amalthea, though aged, still stood by him, her presence a symbol of nurturing strength and quiet love. He often rested his hand upon her horn, whispering thanks for the kindness that shaped his soul. For he knew that without her, the storm within him might have grown wild instead of balanced. The nymphs, too, saw the god emerging before their eyes, proud yet sorrowful for his coming departure. They braided wreaths of flowers, placing them upon his brow, symbols of youth about to be left behind. Zeus accepted them with gratitude, carrying both memory and promise in the quiet chambers of his heart. He would wander the cliffs at night, gazing at the horizon, listening to the waves chant his name. In the roar of the sea, he heard not chaos, but a song of waiting, urging him toward his destiny. The sky above answered too, its constellations whispering patterns of battles yet to come. Though young in years, Zeus felt older than time, as if eternity itself had chosen him for its hand. He began to envision not only the fall of Cronus, but the rise of a new order, fair and just. Olympus called to him in dreams, a throne not of tyranny but of balance, guarded by thunder. Each vision etched clarity deeper into him, forging his purpose like a blade in the heart of fire. Zeus trained harder still, his lightning now dancing freely, his storms answering like loyal companions. The ground trembled beneath his steps, not in fear, but in acknowledgement of the strength he carried. Yet he did not let arrogance take root, for Metis had warned him, pride blinds where wisdom sees. So he tempered himself with patience, remembering that the greatest rulers serve before they command. The days of hiding were ending, and with each sunrise, the island seemed to prepare for his leaving. Birds flew in great circles overhead. Waves crashed louder. Winds carried his name across the sea. Even the stars seemed restless, their light flickering like torches, guiding a god toward his path. Zeus felt the call growing stronger, each heartbeat an echo of the storm he was destined to unleash. He stood upon the cliffs one final evening, lightning crackling across his hands, sky roaring in reply. The nymphs gathered behind him, silent, knowing this was the last time they would watch him as theirs. Amalthea nuzzled close, her warmth steady, as if to give him strength for the journey beyond. The Curetes raised their shields in salute, their chant rising like thunder to bless his steps. And Metis, standing apart, spoke softly, "The time is coming, Zeus. Be ready, for the world waits." Zeus breathed deeply, the storm within him calm, yet immense, ready to burst when destiny called. He turned his gaze to the horizon, where the heavens met the sea, where his fate lay in waiting. The boy was gone, the youth transformed, and in his place stood the god of storms, unshakable and sure. Though Cronus still ruled above, the silence of fear was breaking, replaced by the rumble of change. The world did not yet know his name, but the sky, the sea, and the earth had already whispered it. Zeus, child of lightning, bearer of thunder, was ready to rise. The morning broke with a hush, as if the world itself held its breath for what Zeus was about to begin. The sea lay silver under the rising sun, calm yet vast, reflecting the quiet strength within his heart. Zeus stood on the edge of the island, feeling the waves touch the rocks like whispers of farewell. The nymphs gathered around him, their eyes shining with both pride and sorrow at his imminent departure. They had raised him with love, but now they knew the child they once held belonged to destiny's call. Amalthea pressed her head against him one last time, her warmth steady, her eyes full of gentle trust. He whispered gratitude to her, promising never to forget the gift of nurture she had given him. The Curetes raised their shields in rhythm, their chants echoing like thunder, blessing his journey ahead. Their voices rolled across the mountains, rising to the heavens, as though Olympus itself listened in silence. Metis stood apart, calm and radiant, her gaze firm as she prepared to give Zeus her final guidance. "You must leave now," she said. "But do not think of this as leaving safety. Think of it as becoming." Her words struck deeply, reminding him that his path was not escape but transformation into what he was meant to be. Zeus nodded, his eyes bright, his hands trembling with both anticipation and the weight of responsibility. He looked once more at the island, the cave, the cliffs, the sea that had guarded his childhood. Every stone, every tree, every breeze seemed to speak farewell, yet also whispered strength into his soul. The time of hiding was over. The world waited, and his steps would soon change the course of eternity. He gathered his courage, lightning dancing softly at his fingertips, the storm answering like a faithful friend. Metis approached and placed her hand upon his shoulder, steadying the fire that burned within him. "Do not fight with rage," she said. "Fight with clarity, for clarity is the sharpest lightning of all." Zeus bowed his head in respect, etching her wisdom deep into the core of his being. The nymphs wept softly but sang a hymn, their voices sweet and ancient, blessing him with hope. It was a song of beginnings, of journeys yet untaken, of storms yet to shape the sky anew. The melody carried on the wind, mingling with the sea's eternal rhythm, marking this as a sacred hour. Zeus stepped forward, his figure tall against the horizon, no longer a youth but a god becoming. Each step echoed with certainty, carrying him away from shelter into the open arms of destiny. The island faded behind him, yet it did not vanish. It lived within him as memory and strength. As he traveled, the world began to stir, for even the air seemed to know that change was near. Birds flew in restless flocks, rivers rushed faster, and the earth trembled with anticipation of his path. Zeus wandered across mountains and valleys, each step drawing him closer to the heart of his fate. He spoke with travelers, listening more than he spoke, learning the fears and hopes of humankind. Their stories deepened his resolve, for he realized the world longed not for power but for balance. He saw villages bending under storms, seas flooding shores, and hearts praying for justice and peace. In their eyes he found not only fear, but trust and unspoken hope that he might one day answer. And though they did not know his name, he carried their unspoken prayers like fire within his chest. Nights on the road brought visions of his siblings, their voices faint but insistent, calling for release. Zeus would wake with tears on his face, his heart aching to bring them into the light once more. The storm within him grew stronger, yet it was no longer wild. It was steady, disciplined, alive with purpose. He raised his hand to the sky, and lightning answered, illuminating his path with fierce devotion. The stars above seemed to shift, aligning themselves into patterns that whispered of trials to come. Each constellation glimmered like a promise, guiding him through darkness toward the dawn of his reign. Zeus carried on, his footsteps guided not by haste, but by certainty, each moment forging him anew. The boy of Crete was gone, and in his place walked a god whose spirit carried thunder in silence. And though Cronus still ruled Olympus, the world had begun to tremble, not in fear, but in expectation. For change was coming, swift and unstoppable, carried on the wings of storms and the heart of Zeus. The world beyond Crete was vast, filled with wonders and whispers, and Zeus walked among them as both traveler and god. He crossed mountains crowned with snow, their peaks like silent guardians watching over the lands below. Villages lay in the valleys, simple and fragile, their people living in awe of the storms and the stars. Zeus moved quietly, never revealing his divinity, listening instead to the rhythm of human life. He saw joy in their songs, sorrow in their struggles, and hope in the way they looked to the skies. At night, he would sit by fires, hearing stories of the Titans and their rule that weighed heavily on all. Cronus was known in their tales as a shadow, distant yet suffocating, a king who never gave warmth. The people longed for change, though they dared not speak it loudly, for fear still held their tongues. Zeus felt their unspoken words, as if they were prayers, each one sparking the lightning in his soul. He realized his destiny was not only for himself, but for all who yearned for balance and light. The path grew harder as he ventured farther, storms rising suddenly, as if the heavens tested him. But Zeus welcomed the winds and rain, letting them strike his body, learning their rhythm and might. Each storm became a lesson, shaping his spirit, teaching him not to resist, but to flow with power. His heart was steady, his hands strong, and the lightning that answered him grew ever more precise. The earth, too, seemed to guide him, rocks crumbling to reveal hidden paths, rivers parting just enough. It was as though the world itself wished to see him succeed, to bring dawn after ages of dusk. One evening, as twilight painted the sky, Zeus found himself at the ruins of an ancient temple. The columns lay broken, vines creeping over stone, yet the air shimmered with a sacred stillness. He stepped inside, and there, in the silence, he felt the presence of the forgotten gods. Whispers echoed in his heart, not words but impressions, reminders of a time before Cronus ruled. They were not voices of power, but of memory, urging him to remember what had been lost. Zeus knelt, touching the stone, and vowed to restore the harmony that once united heaven and earth. As he rose, a star fell across the sky, blazing like a torch, a sign of approval from above. Strength surged through him, not only from the storm, but from the hope of generations past. He left the temple with renewed resolve, the night alive, with omens that pointed to his future. On the road, Zeus met wanderers, seers, and dreamers, each one offering fragments of wisdom. One spoke of fate as a river that could not be dammed, only guided with care and vision. Another spoke of courage, saying it was not the absence of fear, but the mastery of it. Zeus listened closely, for he knew even the humblest words carried the weight of truth. In his heart he gathered these lessons, weaving them with his own, crafting the fabric of leadership. He understood more clearly, now that victory would not come from lightning alone. It would come from unity, from calling upon others, from standing not above but alongside. His siblings, trapped in shadow, were waiting, and he could almost hear their voices in the wind. Their longing called to him, and he answered silently, promising to bring them into the light again. The road stretched onward, but Zeus did not waver, for each step was guided by purpose. He was no longer wandering aimlessly, but walking directly toward the heart of destiny's fire. The stars above seemed to gather, forming patterns that resembled thrones, crowns, and storms. Zeus raised his hand, and lightning danced across the heavens, answering with a brilliance unmatched. The night was alive, the world awake, and Zeus himself was a beacon of coming change. Though Cronus still ruled Olympus, the silence of ages was breaking, one heartbeat at a time. The people stirred in their dreams, the earth hummed beneath their feet, and the seas whispered hope. And Zeus, walking beneath the constellations, carried within him both storm and peace, fire and light. For he was not just a god of thunder, he was the promise of dawn after the longest night. The night sky shimmered as Zeus reached the edge of his wandering, where destiny began to take form. The constellations glowed brighter, as if the heavens themselves lit his path toward the future. He paused at a high mountain, the winds fierce, the stars vast, the earth whispering its secrets below. This was no ordinary place. It was a threshold, a boundary between what was and what must come. Zeus stood tall, lightning curling around his fingers, the storm within him alive yet calm. He knew the time had arrived to prepare for the great challenge that lay before him. Cronus still ruled Olympus, holding his siblings in shadow, and the world waited for liberation. But Zeus had learned patience, and patience gave him strength greater than reckless fury ever could. He sat upon the rocks, gazing into the horizon, recalling the voices that had shaped his soul, Amalthea's nurturing, Metis's wisdom, the nymphs' songs and the Curetes' chants all echoed within him. They were not left behind. They lived in his heart, guiding his every step into the unknown. Zeus closed his eyes and listened to the wind, and in it, he heard his siblings' faint cries. Their voices were fragile, yet unbroken, like stars hidden behind clouds, still burning, still waiting. He swore silently that he would free them, not only for their sake, but for all creation. The promise filled him with a warmth that steadied the storm, shaping his thunder into resolve. Zeus rose from the stone, his presence commanding, his spirit a beacon across sky and earth. He began to train in greater secrecy, mastering his gifts with sharper focus and deeper discipline. The lightning grew brighter in his grasp, no longer wild but obedient, fierce yet controlled. Storms bowed to him now, their winds swirling in harmony, their rain falling at his command. The mountains echoed his practice, their peaks splitting light into rivers of brilliance. Even the seas responded, waves rising and calming to the rhythm of his steady will. Zeus had become more than a bearer of storms. He was their master, their heart, their guide. Yet power did not blind him, for Medus's words echoed always. Lead not with fear, but with trust. He carved this truth into his spirit, knowing it would define the ruler he was meant to be. One dawn, as the first light touched the horizon, a great eagle soared overhead. It circled him once, its cry sharp and clear, before flying toward the distance of Olympus. Zeus watched in silence, understanding this was an omen, a call from fate itself. The eagle's path was his path, straight into the shadow of Cronus, straight into the fire of destiny. He felt no fear, only the steady rhythm of thunder in his chest, guiding his steps forward. The world stirred beneath him. Villages awoke with hope. Forests hummed. Rivers sparkled in rising Sunday. All creation seemed to sense that change was near, that a new order was about to begin. Zeus walked on, no longer wandering but marching toward Olympus with certainty in every step. Each stride echoed across the land like distant thunder, announcing the coming of a storm. He knew the trials ahead would be great, but he also knew he was no longer alone. The earth, the sky, the seas, the stars, all were with him, waiting for his moment to rise. Zeus lifted his hand to the heavens, and lightning answered, blazing across the sky like fire. It was not destruction, but a promise, a light to pierce the shadows that had lingered too long. He smiled, for he understood now he was not only a god of storms, but a god of renewal. The winds carried his laughter, warm and steady, across valleys and peaks, into the hearts of all. And though Cronus's shadow still darkened Olympus, the silence of fear was breaking at last. The dawn of a new age shimmered on the horizon, born in the storm, carried by Zeus. The boy of Crete was gone. The youth of hidden caves no more. Now stood the lightning god. He was ready to face what awaited him, ready to fight not with rage but with clarity. And so, with the storm at his back and the world at his side, Zeus walked toward Olympus. The journey was not over, but the god of thunder had risen, and his name would echo forever.